Genshin Impact's 4.4 patch will bring Lantern Rite along with the extremely anticipated Xianyun, Nahida, Yae Miko, and Xiao. And while some people know exactly who they want to get, a lot of people are having trouble deciding. That's why in this video we'll go over Xianyun, Nahida, Yae Miko, and Xiao's strengths, weaknesses, team viability, and overall value. That way you'll know if one of these upcoming 5 stars is worth your primogems. After I give you a breakdown of each character, I'll tell you who is the best value for your primogems and give you a strong proven strategy that will help you get the characters you really want in the future. Each of the 5 stars will receive a grading from bad to great in several categories, including personal damage, support capability, team flexibility, and free-to-play friendliness. I will also recommend characters that would make really good teammates for these 5 stars, since you often need specific characters to really unlock the power of a limited 5 star. But as always, if you know who you really want, then go for them. This is a guide to help clarify what the patch 4.4 limited 5 stars can do well and what they struggle with, so you'll be better prepared to solve any problems that arise when you play them. Just know that Xianyun is a new 5 star, so we still need to test her to fully understand how good she is, but based on the info we have, we can still give her a proper evaluation. And speaking of Xianyun, let's talk about the human form of Cloud Retainer first, or Burbonetta. Burb Retainer is an attack scaling animo healer and support character. Her normal attacks look pretty, but really that's it. Her skill allows you to do up to 3 consecutive leaps and do a special plunging attack afterwards, and the damage of this plunge attack is increased by the number of leaps you did. Her elemental burst heals the team and then continuously heals them over time. In addition to the healing, her burst also summons a little mechanical crane that follows your character around and allows you to jump much higher. This means that Burb Retainer's burst will essentially turn any character into Xiao, allowing them to jump high and then plunge attack repeatedly. You can use this special state granted by her elemental burst to plunge attack up to 8 times, and every time you plunge attack, she will do a coordinated attack that will deal animo damage. Her passive talents are kind of anti-synergistic. One of them gives you a little bit of crit rate when you're attacking multiple enemies with your plunge attacks, and the other one adds quite a bit of damage to your plunging attacks based on Shenhe's own attack, but it only works against one enemy. So, is Burbonetta worth your primogems, or does one need to spend more time tinkering with her little machines and leave you and your primos alone? It's time to give Xianyun a rating. Xianyun's personal damage is bad. Even though Xianyun is an attack scaling healer, the damage from her abilities is actually surprisingly low. Overall, the talent scalings on her skill are pretty low, considering that you have to use your skill 3 times to get the good amount of talent damage on the ability, and that's going to take up a lot of field time where you could be using someone else instead. And the talent scalings on her elemental burst are even worse, and the coordinated attack from her little crane friend with the plunging attacks is basically negligible. Many people will build Xianyun with over 3000 attack, but even at that point her damage won't feel very significant. That is, unless you want to go for her Constellation 6, where she will become a good damage dealer, but honestly that's not worth it for most people. So her personal damage is not very good, but let's talk about how she can make up for that in a lot of other ways. Xianyun's support capability is great. Xianyun not only really helps characters that want to do plunging attacks like Gaming and Xiao, but she also enables so many different characters to be played in a plunging attack role. This enables a lot of old characters to be played in new ways. She also is a whole team healer that also heals over time, which is very valuable since more characters are now draining their own HP. Furthermore, Xianyun can also take advantage of the incredibly powerful Viridescent artifact set to increase your team's overall damage by reducing the enemy's resistance to Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, or Electro. Xianyun's team flexibility is good. At first, she might seem like a very niche support for only a couple of characters, until you realize that she enables a new type of playstyle, which means that you can play almost any character with her. Since she can make anyone a plunge attack DPS thanks to her elemental burst, and since plunge attacks have generally higher talent scaling, even weaker characters can feel much stronger with Xianyun, especially because she can further buff their plunge attack damage thanks to her passive. The fact that she's also a whole team healer makes her really valuable for a lot of players, but her value shoots way up if you have Farina. Furina and Xianyun's burst have great synergy, and Furina's damage boost with Xianyun's plunge attack buff can easily make characters deal hundreds of thousands of damage with their plunge attacks. Xianyun's free-to-play friendliness is good. Retainer can be played in a lot of different teams, and she also has some pretty good free-to-play weapon options. For example, the Oath-Sworn Eye, which was an event weapon from Inazuma, is almost as good as her signature weapon, but a lot of people might not have that weapon because it was an event exclusive. However, craftable weapons like the Hakushin Ring are decent weapons for her, and like almost all support Catalyst characters, the 3-star Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers is also a nice option for her if you can reach her energy recharge requirements. Xianyun's overall rating is good to great. She seems like she might be a really niche support at first, but really she enables a new type of playstyle that will work with a lot of different characters. She works really well with less used characters like Diluc and Fremine, to buffing already strong hyper carries like Hu Tao and Xiao, while also offering advantages for certain Catalyst characters like Wriothesley or Aggravate Yae Miko. She's also a whole team healer that can reliably use the Viridescent artifact set, so all those things in combination make her a very good support character. I think the biggest value for Xianyun is that she gives people a new way to play old characters, and she lets any character play in a different type of play style. Genshin has been out for quite a while, and a lot of people have literally played the same characters and teams for years. Xianyun offers a new way to play these characters, and she offers a breath of fresh air for characters that might be feeling stale, especially if you're a veteran Genshin player who's played the same teams over and over. She also offers newer players more ways to play, and is a nice character for people who want to make traditionally weaker characters feel much stronger. Recommended teammates for Xianyun include Furina, Bennett, especially if C6, Hu Tao, Gaming, Ayaka, Wriothesley, Sino, Yae Miko, Xiao, Diluc, Noelle, Chongyun, and a bunch of other characters. The next 5-star on the list is the little Dendro baby and radish god that hits harder than realizing Hoyo thinks we're only worth 3 wishes. It's Nahida. The Dendro Archon's main playstyle revolves around her elemental skill. It allows you to do a quick swipe for a small AoE, or enter a camera-like state and spin around and mark enemies. Every enemy that is either hit or marked by the press or hold version of her skill are tethered together. And when you trigger an elemental reaction on any one of these marked enemies, it will trigger Nahida's Trikarma Purification, which will deal considerable amounts of Dendro damage to every enemy marked in the chain. The length at which the enemies can be tethered and the range of her hold skill are quite large, allowing Nahida to deal AoE damage to enemies that are normally out of other characters' range. Nahida's elemental skill is her main source of damage, but beyond its use in combat, it can also be used to gather plants and read the minds of some NPCs in Sumeru, which is kinda nice but also creepy. Nahida's elemental burst deals no damage, but it does summon a beautiful domain and it buffs her as well as the rest of the party. The buffs Nahida receives are based on the elements of the characters in your party. When you have 1 or 2 pyro characters in the party, the damage of Nahida's elemental skill is increased. When you have 1 or 2 electro characters in the party, Nahida's skill can trigger more frequently. And when you have 1 or 2 hydro characters in the party, it will increase the duration of Nahida's elemental burst. Beyond the buffs to Nahida's skill, her elemental burst also increases the entire team's elemental mastery by 25% of the character who has the highest elemental mastery in the team. And speaking of elemental mastery, Nahida scales very well with elemental mastery because her skill is attack and elemental mastery scaling, but it's more heavily weighted towards elemental mastery, and she also gets a passive that increases the crit rate of her skill the more elemental mastery she has. So how does the Dendro Archon and Tiny Cabbage of Wisdom stack up against the other characters? It's time to give Nahida a rating. Nahida's personal damage is great. Nahida's normal attacks are not really anything special, but her elemental skill is extremely strong. Not only does her skill do tons of damage, it also has really good AoE potential because it can tether between multiple enemies. It also triggers very often because it triggers upon elemental reactions, and different enemies can be triggered at different times in the chain. Dendro reacts with a lot of elements, so this is happening very frequently. Her skill further applies a lot of Dendro and generates a lot of Dendro particles, and all of this can happen while she's not even on the field. And while her elemental burst does not deal any damage directly, the extra elemental mastery and the buffs it gives to her skill will make her hit even harder, as well as giving your team extra damage from the elemental reactions thanks to the elemental mastery buff they all receive. Nahida's support capability is great. There is no Dendro team that would not benefit from having Nahida. Her personal and team buffing capabilities, combined with the high amounts of Dendro application and Dendro energy she generates, make her a premier support for any team that wants a Dendro character. But when you combine this with her high damage potential and her capability to do everything off-field, she becomes one of the best characters in the game. Nahida's team flexibility is great. The Dendro element, and specifically Dendro reactions, are very strong and very useful. This is balanced around the fact that a lot of Dendro characters are not really good at applying Dendro to cause a lot of these Dendro reactions. Except for Nahida, she is great at applying Dendro and causing Dendro damage. Even in teams that already have a Dendro character, like teams with Alhaitham, she is really good and a really useful support because not only does she apply a lot of Dendro, but she also grants a lot of Dendro particles and Dendro energy, which can be very, very useful. On top of all the buffs and everything else she brings, she is just an incredibly strong character and can benefit just about any player. That's because you can make so many good teams with a Dendro character like Nahida, and because of how good she is, she makes lesser used characters feel much stronger. Nahida's free-to-play friendliness is great. Nahida can use a lot of different weapons from 4 stars like the Sacrificial Fragments, but if you don't have that weapon because it is a gacha weapon, she can use the 3-star weapon, the Magic Guide, to great effect. Nahida also needs less investment than other characters to be very strong, and because she pairs well with so many different characters, including a lot of free-to-play characters, she ends up being very, very free-to-play friendly. Nahida's overall rating is great. She is one of the best characters in the game and pretty much the best option for any Dendro team you want to run. She's extremely versatile, extremely free-to-play friendly, and also extremely powerful. There are so many different types of characters that Nahida can work well with, so it's really hard to recommend specific teams for her, but just know that she can work well with almost any Hydro, Electro, Pyro, or other Dendro character. However, some of my favorite characters to run with Nahida include Alhaitham, Kuki, Beidou, Fischl, Raiden, Yu'lon, Jingqiu, Farina, Ayato, and Toma and Dea for Burgeon. Next we move on to the very tall and very happy demon quelling dragoon, Xiao. Xiao's main playstyle revolves around him using his elemental burst, where he dons his Yaksha mask and slowly drains his health while being able to jump higher and plunge down onto enemies, dealing AoE animo damage. Xiao's elemental skill is a quick dash forward that can also be used in the air. However, his elemental skill does not generate any animo particles if used during his elemental burst, so when playing Xiao you definitely want to use his elemental skill right before you enter his elemental burst state. Xiao's special plunge attack while he's in his elemental burst state also has a pretty sizable amount of knockback, meaning it can push enemies away. This can be really annoying because it means you're often going to have to chase down enemies, and a consequence of continuously chasing down enemies is not only that you waste a bunch of time, but also that you have the high probability of outranging buffs like Bennett's Burst. Other than that, Xiao is a pretty simple character to use. You just simply use his skill a couple times right before entering his elemental burst, and then you just jump and plunge your way to victory. Once your elemental burst state runs out, you just switch to your other characters, reapply buffs, and then switch back into Xiao and use his elemental burst again and repeat plunging on enemies once more. That is, if your Xiao and teammates have enough energy to reapply their buffs and for Xiao to get back into his elemental burst when it's off cooldown. It is pretty common for a lot of Xiao teams to struggle with energy, so that's something you should know if you'd like to play him. Xiao used to be considered one of the big 3, the best hypercarries in the game, but that was a long time ago. Have the years of fighting demons of the abyss worn Xiao down, or is he just as strong now as ever? It's time to give Xiao a rating. Xiao's personal damage is great. Xiao does very well in AoE situations, but he can also do quite a lot of single target damage with the right combos and collision plunging. Xiao's support capability is bad. Xiao is a hyper carry, and if he is not being used on field, he offers nothing to the team. He needs an entire team built around him, so he has no support capability in his kit. Xiao's team flexibility is okay. It used to be pretty bad, but now he has a lot more characters that will work with him. That being said, almost all of Xiao's teams can be super expensive. There are not many teams where C0 4-stars will work well with Xiao, and oftentimes he wants multiple C6 or limited 5-star characters in his team. For example, Xiao really appreciates C6 Farazan as well as Xianyun, but some people may feel that going for those characters is not worth their primogems to make one character better when they could be used for getting other characters instead. And it's not like you can't use Xiao with non-premium characters, but the characters that you might use him with otherwise could do well in other teams and bring those other teams a little bit more benefit than they could bring Xiao. This is one of the unfortunate things with hyper carries like Xiao, is that they often need really well invested other characters on the team to really show off the potential of the character you actually want to play. Xiao's free-to-play friendliness is bad. There aren't any great free-to-play weapons for Xiao, unlike a lot of other characters, and the fact that he often wants a lot of limited 5-star characters on his team or 4-stars with multiple constellations makes his free-to-play friendliness overall not very good, especially for newer players who haven't been able to fully develop their accounts or have a 5-star weapon to give Xiao. Xiao's overall rating is okay. Xiao brings a ton of personal damage and has incredibly high potential, but he can be one of the most expensive characters in the game. There's a dramatic difference between a free-to-play or newer player with Xiao and a well-invested or veteran player with Xiao. He has the potential to be an absolute monster, but he also has such a high barrier to overcome compared to other characters that it's really hard to recommend him for people that are not prepared to do what it takes to make him great. Recommended teammates for Xiao include Zhongli, C4 Jean, Layla, Bennett, C6 Farazan, Farina, and Xianyun. The next 5-star on the list is the ever-teasing Kitsune Yae Miko. Yae Miko was a pretty bad character when she first came out. The 90 cost and 22-second cooldown burst, as well as gameplay issues and overall mediocre damage, really held her back. And while she still has a few issues, she is a lot better now. Her gameplay revolves around summoning up to 3 fox totems that deal AoE electro damage at enemies. You will have to keep summoning these over and over, and they only last for a few seconds, and when you use her burst, it also destroys all of the fox totems and summons an extra lightning bolt for each totem destroyed, meaning you'll also have to resummon these totems after her burst. I personally find this extremely annoying, but some people don't seem to mind. While the core gameplay aspects of Yae Miko haven't changed, her damage and utility got a big boost thanks to the Dendro element, specifically in Hyperbloom teams. Yae is one of the few Electro characters that can reliably proc Hyperbloom off-field, meaning you can build her full EM and she can output massive damage, which is great since she gets extra bonuses when she builds EM as well. With these factors in mind, let's grade the teasing Kitsune and Raiden's personal chef, Miss Miko. Yae's personal damage is good. You definitely want to pair her with either Dendro characters for a Quicken or Aggravate style team, or with Dendro and Hydro characters and use her as the trigger for a Hyperbloom team. Outside of Dendro teams though, her damage really isn't that good, but in Dendro teams she feels pretty nice. She has AoE damage with her turrets, and if you decide that you want to build her full EM for a Hyperbloom team, you don't even need to worry about using her elemental burst and taking the massive amount of energy recharge and worrying about the long cooldown that you'd need to think about if you wanted to use her as a burst support. Yae Miko's support capability is okay. She can deal damage off-field or on-field, which is quite nice, and any character that can do that is always welcome. She's a great Hyperbloom trigger, but a character like Kuki Shinobu can outshine Yae Miko because she can also trigger Hyperbloom and is a healer, which consolidates a few different roles into one character. Yae, on the other hand, has an easier time triggering Hyperblooms than Kuki because her turrets have a much greater range than Kuki's Electro Ring, but when a 4-star character can fulfill a similar role but also have another role in that of a healer, then Yae's value for your primogems definitely diminishes. Yae Miko's team flexibility is good. She really wants to be in a Dendro team, and luckily she can be played on-field or off-field, which gives her a lot more options. Outside of Dendro teams, however, she doesn't feel very strong, so just run her in a Quicken or Hyper Bloom team and you'll be golden. Yae Miko's free-to-play friendliness is good. While it's a lot harder to build her as a carry with a lot of attack and crit, it's pretty easy to go full EM with something like a Mappamare or a Magic Guide as weapons, or even a Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers if you feel like you need the extra attack for another character. And because she really wants to be a part of a Dendro team, you can make some pretty serviceable free-to-play team comps with just Yae and the characters you get for free, but you can also make much better teams if you have more characters. Yae Miko's overall rating is good. If you have Dendro characters and want to run a Quicken team, or Dendro and some Hydro characters and want to run a Hyper Bloom team, Yae Miko is a great option. While characters like Kuki Shinobu can be a little bit more useful, Hyper Bloom teams are just so strong that you may want to run multiple versions of them. And that's why Yae Miko is a decent pickup, and if you do like her, she will perform well. Recommended teammates for Yae Miko include just about any Dendro or Hydro character, since she can be played on or off field. And with the ratings finished, who should you wish for? Nahida is the best choice for almost everyone. She brings tremendous value to your account because she's a great off-field damage dealer, Dendro applicator, and energy generator, as well as a team buffer. Nahida is one of the best characters in the game and is basically the Dendro equivalent of a character like Kazuha. If you already have Nahida, then Xianyun is a very solid character and my number 2 recommendation, particularly if the idea of turning other characters into plunge attack damage dealers seems like a fun time. After that, I'd rate Yae Miko slightly above Xiao just because it's easier to make good teams with Yae than it is to make good teams with Xiao, and those Yae teams do not need as much investment. However, if you get Xianyun in Phase 1 and also get Xiao in Phase 2, then Xiao will become much stronger. But I definitely would not recommend going for multiple 5 stars in a patch unless you have thousands and thousands of primogems to burn. If you already have Nahida and Xianyun doesn't interest you, I recommend waiting 10 days before deciding if you want to go for Yae Miko or wish for Xiao. Because 10 days after their banner's release, we'll get the 4.5 livestream, and that will let us know which 5 stars are due after patch 4.4. You'll still have plenty of time to wish for Yae Miko or Xiao if you want to, but you'll also know for sure which 5 stars are coming after them. That way you can make a better decision about whether you want to wish for Yae Miko, Xiao, or another 5 star more. And if you're still unsure who to wish for, you are welcome to come by my Twitch stream and ask who is best for you. You can tell me who you want, who you have, and I can give you recommendations on who would be best for you. I stream daily in the mornings Eastern Standard Time, and you can catch me live at twitch.tv/sharkheart. I hope this review has been helpful and clarified the value of certain characters for you. Please let me know which characters you're going for, and don't be afraid to stop by on Twitch and ask for my shark blessing. 50% of the time, it works 100% of the time. I love you, stay jawsome, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.